Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Weathered Questions. This is a special episode for a number of reasons. In fact, number one, it puts a cap on a very successful season number one, which is totally hard to believe, but that's what's been going on. So we're already a full season into this. This is our 12th episode here together, Jan. And I think every episode has gone great. We've had great engagement from folks, getting a lot of awesome questions. And we encourage you to leave some feedback for us, read a review, leave us a review, tell your friends about us. And now that we're kind of getting into the school year season, if you have an opportunity, maybe in an educational setting, and you just need a couple of folks to answer some weather questions, maybe help with your science unit a little bit, let us know.
That'd
Absolutely.
be so much fun.
Let us know. Jan is your STEM connection. So please let us know all about that. And of course, anything that's on top of your mind, we want you to know that you can ask us pretty much anything. We're not going to do your homework for you, but you can ask us any sort of weather questions that are definitely on your mind. So we're also going to say just right up front that we have pre-recorded this a little bit in advance. Jan's actually enjoying herself in Ireland right now. Not jealous at all.
Past me, future me is very excited, is very happy. I don't know how this time travel thing works, but yeah.
Man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
By the magic of technology.
Whatever you do, eat well over there too.
Oh,
There's going to be stuff over there that you can't get here. So
yes.
Definitely take that into consideration.
I hear that Ireland is much more not quite as known for their food, maybe as their beer.
Try one of those. I try one.
Absolutely.
Have your husband try one.
Oh, for sure. No,
yeah.
I am very much a when in Rome kind of person, where, maybe it's not something I'd normally eat at home, but hey, if this is what you do best as a local, I am all for it.
Do what you got to do. Absolutely. It's going to be fun.
All right, let's dive into this week's episode. Up first, very short and simple question, Kai. Well, short question, maybe not simple. I'll retract that second part. How does radar work?
Oh boy.
Short There's a question, lot of facets we could go into.
Long answer. So I will tell you, and I'm going to define this in a number of ways that I did for some school visits. And it works with adults as well when I've talked to them in the past. So radar is essentially radio detection and ranging. They're sound waves that are going out and back. They're moving very quickly. So you don't have to worry about that. They're flying through the air. Radars cannot control weather. Okay. They just measure weather. They can't steer it. They can't strengthen it. They can't weaken it. It doesn't have that type of power to do that. Mm-hmm. But what happens is it sends a wave out. And then what we see on our end as meteorologists are what we call radar returns. Sometimes an on-air meteorologist will refer to it as reflectivity or just some colors here and there. And there's two things about that. Number one, to get it to plot on the map a certain distance from the radar times out really just how quick does that bounce come back to me. That's where I know where the target's at. If it's farther out, it'll take a little bit longer to come back. And then how much energy, as we call, is reflected back to me. And what is on the interface of your smartphones, what's on the interface of most internet radar providers, you look at the green, you look at the orange, the red, the yellow, that is all what's called reflectivity. And that's just simply how much energy is coming back within that volume scan of the radar. And the brighter the color, the more energy that's coming back. Mm-hmm. That's usually heavy rain. It can be hail. It can be sleet. And sometimes it can be very wet snowflakes too that are highly reflective. But with the what's called dual polarization upgrade, now we not just get the one scan, but we also get it in the vertical as well. Which means if we really want to interrogate the storm even more, and many folks don't care about this. They just know that the red is coming and that's a problem.
Yep.
But in our line of work and in the National Weather Service's line of work, if they need to issue a warning, sometimes you'll see a storm that looks identical, except they're going to warn it for penny-sized hail for one with 60-mile-an-hour winds, let's say. And then for another one, they go with ping-pong ball-sized hail. And you look at it from reflectivity and you go, well, gosh, that looks the same to me. So what are they seeing that's different? What they might be seeing is the shape of the targets, because if you go out sideways with your beam and back, you get one dimension. If you go vertical, you get a second dimension. So you can tell if your target is a circle. You can tell if it's flat. If it's flat, it's probably a raindrop, or it might be a snowflake. If it is circular, it may very well be a hailstone.
Mhm.
And if you've got a wide variety, then there's another component out there that tells you how alike all the targets are. So if you've got rain and hail of various sizes mixed together, it actually shows that to you on the radar. So it is a complicated machine. The radar equation is one that will keep you up at night. We don't need to share it here. In fact, I don't have it off the top of my head,
No,
and you
I
don't
don't
want to
either.
know about it.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on here. Is it's a machine that is sending out a sound wave and coming back. Depending how fast it comes back, and depending how much of it comes back, that's how it plots on a map.
And there's lots of different things we could go into based off of this, right? There are nuances where your radar beam may hit something and then bounce back either sooner than it's supposed to, or because of other things happening in the atmosphere, maybe it bounces further back, and so then it misplaces your storm, things like that. There are so many different caveats to this. It's why meteorologists go to college and take a class all about radar and instrumentation, is to learn all of these different artifacts. But that's the basics of it, right? That there's those pulses going out, there's those different things coming back to the radar telling it, hey, I found something that's this wide by this high. And so then we have things programmed in, so it kind of translates it to, that's probably a raindrop or a hailstone, or whatever it may be. Kai mentioned that's hailstone is probably going to be more spherical, and the reason for that, think about it, even as it's falling, even if it's not a perfect circle, it's tumbling, it's falling, it's going to be rounded out because of the falling nature of it. That raindrop that Kai mentioned, that's probably flat, which maybe doesn't seem, maybe is a little counterintuitive to what you would think. It's because it's getting flattened out as it's falling through the air resistance.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
The biggest problem we're coming up with right now is populated cities.
Yeah.
So we'll occasionally do investigations for weather, and we have to just take notes that, like, all right, if we use a low radar beam tilt here, we're going to hit the top of these skyscrapers that they just put up. And so you constantly have reflectivity showing up. Or
you have that problem in mountain areas too a lot. That's why sometimes you'll see radars either more frequently placed or placed in places that you're like, well, we don't really need a radar there. We have one right over here or something like that. It's because the mountains are getting in the way. And the radar's great at going through clouds and air and things like that, but it's really bad at going through giant rocks.
Once it hits an object, it's a problem.
Exactly.
And we have a huge issue with wind turbines. Huge issue, especially when it's raining, because then you have wet metal. And it just depends on the atmospheric conditions as to how much the beams bounce around. But I've seen those actually trip up meteorologists on the air before, and they'll actually circle them and storm track them. And I'll go, oh no. The reason why that's stationary is because it's not a storm. Sorry, you got bit by that, but it's not a storm. So that kind of gets us, it's a very complicated instrument in that sense. There's so many options, there's so many things, and that's why there's sort of literal courses called radar meteorology that encompass an entire semester. So August through December, you can learn to your heart's content about what radar is all about. But it gives us a good idea of going next into our additional question here that kind of keeps the radar theme going. So the question is, and we get this a lot in the winter, but we'll talk about it as rain. Why does radar show it's raining, but it's not actually raining on me? Jan, ideas?
Yeah. So a couple different things that go into that. I'll tag off of what you just mentioned about wind turbines. It could be that radar beam is hitting something else, that it's hitting something that is not in fact precipitation at all. And maybe you don't normally see that because it's filtered out based on the mode of the radar. But example, right now, looking at the radar with perfectly clear skies overhead as we're recording this, I do see some returns coming back on the radar, and those are in fact where there are wind turbine farms, and I know that just based off of knowing my area, right? So that's possibility number one, is that it's hitting something else like a wind turbine, the top of a skyscraper, a mountain, those things that we just kind of talked about. It could be hitting something that is natural but still not precipitation, like birds or bugs or things like that. That's again a whole other thing that we could get into. There's things called roost rings that happen a lot of times in the evening or in the morning as a lot of birds are either taking off or coming in to nest. And those will actually get picked up on radar. Sometimes you have storms moving through and you'll get a gust front that picks up a whole bunch of bugs, or here in Iowa, corn stalks or things like that, that it's, it's not a straight line wind. It's just a gust front, just a decent 20, 30 mile an hour wind moving through, but it just picks up enough of that out ahead of the storm. So those are a couple possibilities. The other one, and more arguably more common, is something called virga. And that is basically you have precipitation coming down from the clouds, whether it's rain or in the winter. Again, we can talk snow too, but essentially that precipitation is just evaporating before it gets to the ground. It's going through a dry layer of air aloft, and it's not able to get all the way down to the ground. So where that radar beam is detecting the rain is far enough over you that it is in fact detecting precipitation and showing you exactly what it's seeing on the radar, but you at the ground are not able to get that because it's evaporated before it gets to you.
Yep, and we see that in the wintertime constantly. And there's actually a process in meteorology called top-down saturation. So all of a sudden you've got these radar beams spinning, right? They're sending out these radio waves all around. And let's not keep in mind too that it depends how far away you are from the radar. Mm-hmm. And if that beam is sitting there at 5,000 or 6,000 feet above your head, maybe it's snowing up there, but all the flakes are drying up as they come down. And I've been bit before even issuing a several inch snowfall forecast, and it hasn't even snowed because we underestimated the dry air layer down near the ground, and the radar was packed with blue all day and it never touched the ground. And all of a sudden the storm system left, and I went, well, all right, so we had more dry air than what we thought, but those radio waves go out at an angle. And if you look very carefully at a radar image, I doubt you'll ever see this on a television weather app. Normally it's just whatever the layer is. But if you look online, National Weather Service, you might see 0.5 degree tilt, 0.9 degree tilt. And if you think about your trigonometry, that's not a totally flat radar beam. It is tilted up slightly and then tilted up a little bit more and then a little bit more. So those radio waves go out. Well, yeah, over a 50-mile range, then, yeah, they're going to be pretty high off the ground. But if you're very close to it, you kind of can start to see those returns come in, and we call that the radar donut hole. And when the donut hole starts to close on the radar loop, that means stuff's starting to get closer to the ground. So there's a number of reasons why radar might be picking up on something and it's not touching the ground yet. But it's a good thing. It's a good tool. It's one of the best tools I think that we've had in meteorology in a long time.
Absolutely. And we mentioned a whole bunch of different things there. If that, we didn't quite get into the details of something that you were curious about, feel free to submit a question to weatheredquestions@gmail.com. And we're happy to dive into that a little bit more because there's so many different things with radar.
Yep.
Right.
There's entire documents of all the radar artifacts, and there's entire workshops actually that take weeks to complete that are on the National Weather Service website. And you can learn all about the different. They can even learn for a whole day just how the thing actually generates its data and how much power it uses and how the radio waves are generated. It's just, it's ridiculous.
It really is.
The amount of knowledge that goes into that. It's very cool.
All right. Before we wrap up radar though, Kai, I have a trivia question and I'm very excited about this one because I think I'm going to teach you something. That is not the way that this relationship normally goes. So today's trivia question is, how was radar first used? So it's open-ended. Write your answer in Jeopardy style. We'll give you this ad to think of your answer.
Picture this, a maintenance-free deck paired with a jaw-dropping pergola, giving the perfect blend of shade and style and making the ideal spot for relaxing and enjoying the outdoors. Now imagine a sunroom, a bright, inviting space where nature can be enjoyed year-round from the comfort of your home. At Hometown Restyling, big dreams become reality, and it's easier than ever with 0% financing for 60 months. Go to hometownrestyling.com for a free quote.
Today's trivia question.
All right, welcome back. Today's trivia question, we are covering radar, as we've been talking about here through the first half of the show. And today's trivia question is, how was radar first used? And like I said, right leading into this, I'm excited about this because I'm going to teach Kai something. Do you have any guesses, Kai? I'm very curious first.
You're going to stump me on this. I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to guess something that has to do birds, planes, aviation, somewhere
Planes,
in there.
you got it. Planes.
Is it right? Is it really planes?
Yeah. So like everything that's super cool and technical in the world, it all started in the military, right?
Okay.
So
all right.
it started
That makes sense.
detecting aircraft actually back in World War II. And the military was using this specifically. It was designed to detect enemy aircraft. And they kept getting these extra things on screen that they thought it was aircraft, and they reported it, and then it wasn't, and then they had things that were not going how they should. Turns out that radar is really good at finding rain, and so they ended up adapting its
Interesting.
use to be for rain and snow and weather precipitation and weather artifacts versus aircraft. Now obviously radar, we know, is used for a lot of different things. There's various types of radar, lidar, it can still be used to detect aircraft, but as we know, it's the frequency of it is perfect for precipitation.
Yeah. Well, you still taught me something. Even though I guessed planes, I didn't know it was World War II.
Yep.
I did not know that. I
Yep.
didn't know it was used that long ago. Wow.
So yeah,
cool.
that was its original use, and then obviously has been adapted and perfected since. And the
sure.
radar back then, far away from where we are now, right? We had
yeah.
our dual pole
Yep.
that Kai referred to earlier, dual polarization, that both horizontal and vertical beam. That was just an upgrade that happened in the last
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was about 2009, 2010-ish. That's when we all went dual pole. Yeah.
Yep. So we're still making upgrades to radar, and even that is slowly getting phased out as we're going to phased array radars somewhat
Yep.
more commonly as well, but those are very expensive and very fancy, so it's going to take some time to get there.
It is. And our current radar fleet is aging, so there are going to be components that need to be replaced, and occasionally you'll see a system down issue. So we'll see. But yeah, I believe the fleet is about 15 years old, 13 to 15 years old, and there was a plan in place about phased array, and I don't know where that is now. Certainly, if it was eliminated, I hope it can come back, because we need radar, and it's not
a very
just
important
us.
thing.
Everyone
Everybody uses it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. Well, before we completely leave radar, whatever radar it is that you're using, whatever app, whatever TV station you're watching, it is all almost always like 99% weather service radar. It is our NOAA radars. It is not necessarily, like, some people will brand it differently, and some stations do have a very small one, very rare these days. But some stations do have a small local one that will cover pretty much their county, and that's about it. But for the most part, everything is those NWS WR88 radars.
And you can configure the color tables to make them look all different too. So one station looks totally different from the other, But if you were to actually tape all the weathercasts, and depending on what mode they're in, and if you had storms going on, you would see that all three displays are actually identical.
Exactly.
In most cases.
So
All right,
getting that fleet updated is important because it's so widely used.
So in the case of you going to Ireland, football season is among us. One of the neatest football games I watched last year, Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. It was during a lake effect snow event that was epic, absolutely epic. So just putting this out there, question came in, how does lake effect snow work?
Yeah. So essentially, lake effect, it's in the name, you need a lake, right? Now, this isn't happening all the time though. So the specific things that change is usually you'll have an air mass that's moving through that is very cold, and it's moving over your open lake water, which, because water takes longer to change in temperature, is going to be warmer. So basics that we have here is cold air moving over warm water. And essentially that motion will help that warm water, um, that warm air rising, sorry, over the water, in addition to that cold air, will create the clouds and the snow and everything over it. And as it's moving off onto that eastern bank of your, a lot of times you'll see that lake effect snow on, like I just said, the Buffalo side, right? Not necessarily the western side of the lake, but that eastern side of the lake. It's the cold air moving over the warm water and then bringing all that snow up into the air and then dumping it down on land. So when you have that kind of wider swath of like the Great Lakes and stuff like that, you're going to get those bigger amounts of snow versus maybe either a smaller lake or something that changed in temperature more, so it's not quite as big of a temperature differential.
Yeah, and when that happens, when that differential happens, so you've got stability in our atmosphere, and we think about how we generate a storm, we have to heat the ground, which then ground heats the air above it, and it becomes unstable. So essentially, our water surface is our surface over a lake. And because of what you said about heat capacity, without things being able to change as quickly because there's so much to it, typically what we want to look for is in that bottom 1 mile of the atmosphere, if you can get about a 13 degrees Celsius difference from the surface of the water, which equates to about 25 degrees or so, of a difference from the surface of the water all the way up to about 1 mile, you're absolutely unstable as long as that water is above freezing. And we look at that coming in, and if the winds are all in the same direction, that air will actually rise and then build in the vertical, and you can get these lake effect snow bands, as they're called. And they can be absolutely atrocious for people because if the winds shift even just by 10 degrees, it can totally change the outcome of the event. They're very localized and they can move around quite a bit. They can be really super intense. And one thing that seems really backwards, and a lot of times the snow is going to originate over the Midwest states from a different moisture source that gets transported. Over the lake, that is your moisture source. And so lake effect snow, as cool as it might be for those on the shore, it uses up a lot of water. And the Great Lakes evaporate a lot of water in the fall and winter months because that dry, cold air moves over the top, creates basically an evaporation machine, and it goes and goes. And if you're just curious about this, before we get on to the next one here, Jan, so the Great Lakes are the lowest they've been in 10 years. And because we really haven't had a super hard winter up there since 2014. So as a result, the less the lakes freeze over, the more evaporation is going to keep happening in the fall and the winter season. So with them being as warm as they are now, they've had tremendous humidity up there. I think this fall could be absolutely tremendous for lake effect snows if it all lines up right. So we'll see what happens, but that's the big driver of that whole thing. It's all about the water and how cold are you aloft. So after that, do we think a football game is going to get impacted this year? Yeah, probably. That was epic to watch last year.
Chances are that football will be impacted in some way by snow.
Definitely.
Now that said, we do get questions a lot, right, start of football season. What is the rest of the football season going to be like? What's this winter going to be like? What's this fall going to be like? Let's dive into a little bit of kind of that long range forecasting and maybe the trends that we are seeing as we're moving forward towards, dare I say, winter.
Well, unfortunately, I haven't had a huge amount of time to even devote to it. But I will tell you that there are some drivers, some large-scale drivers in our atmosphere that can kind of help us out with that. And one can be oceanic temperatures, whether they are above normal in the Pacific or whether they're below normal in the Pacific, which we call El Nino or La Nina. And in those typical sense, the jet stream can actually change orientation a bit and bring different types of weather, at least predominantly. I've also seen blizzards in El Nino when you typically don't. I've seen really warm spells in La Nina when you typically don't. So it's not an end-all be-all, but it's one of the many factors that you might look for in something like that. I will tell you that lately, it seems like winter has been very late to arrive. It seems trying to get snow by Christmas has been kind of a challenge, but then it lingers. It's like the family member who leaves the party and comes back because they forgot the casserole dish, and then they
Oh,
leave
they
and
actually
they come
leave
back
your party,
again.
Kai? They didn't stay at mine.
No, they come back. They come back. And we've seen snow in April now. I mean, we typically see it anyway, but even snow events in May, it just kind of lingers a little bit. But it's really tough to tell what it's really going to be like. And the seasonal forecasts, I think, very much go with, we're going to try to get a trend down, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be totally accurate. It's very difficult to try and predict an entire season as to how it's going to go, because you're going to be below zero at one point. It's going to happen. And you're also going to probably have a day in the 50s. That's going to happen. It's going to snow at least once. You'll probably have at least one ice event, and you'll probably have at least one rain event. And so the big question is, how much does it really matter? But from a day-to-day standpoint, snow removal companies really care about it. Utility companies definitely care about it because they want to know how cold things might get. And then, of course, you can always have a forecast that just goes against all the research, where you think it's going to be a warm winter and you wind up with one of the coldest 2 weeks we had. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That January was just awful, absolutely terrible. And it can happen just like that.
And I think that's the important thing to remember is, no matter what, whether we say it's going to be a warm winter, whether we say it's going to be a cold winter, whether it's going to be above average precipitation or below average precipitation, you're going to have days with the opposite. Mm-hmm. You're going to have warm days in a cold winter. You're going to have cold days in a warm winter. And you're going to have big snow events in a below average winter precipitation wise. Like, you're going to have, back to our climate and weather conversation from last week, you're going to have those different occurrences just because the entirety of the season is expected to be one way. That doesn't mean every single day is going to follow that to a T. So yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is, based on long-term outlooks, right? We know the accuracy of a forecast will tend to go down past that 5-7 day time period. And there's a reason for that. So if you're asking someone what's going to be like in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, that accuracy is going to be somewhat diminished simply by the nature of the science. We just don't have the science to be able to do something that accurate that far out. Right. We can make generalizations, but that's as good as it's going to get.
Yeah. And there's always going to be outliers. You're always going to have outlier events that happen. But just to kind of put it in perspective, I did run some statistics, and this just happens to be in the eastern half of Iowa where I ran this. So over the past 100 years, we average 14 nights below zero in a given winter. At least that's what the 30-year average is right now. But you go back into the 20s and 30s, and it was actually more like 18 below zero mornings per season. Now, that was also a hotter time of year back then too, for the summertime. So it just kind of shows how these fluctuations happen. We average 24 days of 40 degrees or higher, and that's going up at a rate of 4 days per century in the wintertime. So it is what it is, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get a minus 30 that comes down and kills all your car batteries, and freezes all your pipes. That can still happen, but just the way that things are going, it seems like we may just see more things a little bit out of the ordinary. Maybe we'll have more convective events like storms in the wintertime, which keeps life interesting all the same. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. But the long answer to that one is, I guess we don't know.
Yeah. On that happy
right
note, on that happy note, talking about dying car batteries and the impending cold of winter, I think we're going to wrap up season 1.
We are
of
very
Weathered
successful.
Questions. Yeah. So thank you everybody for coming along and listening with us. Again, we're going to keep going. This is the end of season 1. This is not the end. We'll kick season 2 up in the start of September, but we are going to take next week off for Labor Day. So, give everybody some time off to enjoy with family and friends. In that time, though, you've got now 2 weeks to submit your questions. So, we will be waiting for them for season 2, weatheredquestions@gmail.com. We'll talk to you after Labor Day. Until then, though, thanks for listening and stay safe.